C-Suite Conversation show. Now, Thales is an organization with more than 80,000 employees across 5 continents, providing various solutions for civilian and military customers in defense and security, aerospace, digital identity and security, and transportation markets globally. Now, to tell us more about this, we have Nicolas Bouverot, Vice President for Asia at Thales, to tell us more. Nicolas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon. And indeed, as you've pointed out, I am in charge of Asia for Thales. So just maybe in a nutshell, what does Asia mean? So from a geographical perspective, Asia for Thales is the region starting from Japan, Korea at the north, going all the way down to Indonesia and Papua New Guinea at the south. And then on the west side, it's Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and on the other side, all the way to the Philippines. So it's a multiplicity of countries and markets. We have about 10 offices in all of the key countries, and we employ about 3,000 plus people in that part of the world. So a big operation for us, an area that we've been very successful over the past years, and where we have very high ambitions for the years to come. So I'll be happy to talk to you a little bit more about this today.
Now, Nicolas, since you last came on the show about 2 years ago, geopolitically, a lot of things have changed. And a key event in geopolitics has been the Russian-Ukraine war. And that's obviously impacted not only your defense and security business, but your digital identity and security business. Tell us about how that has changed the mindsets of your customers in Asia.
So several things have happened since I last came on the show. You did mention the Ukraine war. That was a bit over a year ago. That had had very deep impacts around the world, in Asia, but everywhere around the world. At the same time, we've also seen a more and more assertive China in its foreign policy and the way China has been dealing with the region in particular. And in addition to that, I would say the other big change is the increased level of tension around North Korea with the overall weapons development program that is taking place in North Korea. So clearly, this region has been the center of a lot of geopolitical tension, and that has changed a lot of things for us and for the countries in this region. I would say, globally, one of the key takeaways from this situation is that defense is something that cannot be an afterthought. In the years prior to those events that I just mentioned, some countries were more focused on their defense spend and capabilities, and others were much less, thinking that we are living in a world of prosperity and peace, and therefore this is not something that warrants a lot of attention. I think today, each and every country in this part of the world has realized that defense is a prime enabler of stability, of sovereignty, and of freedom in the context that we know, that the geopolitical context that you mentioned, and as well in the context of increased economical competition. So this has resulted in most countries actually refining their defense positions, their capability roadmap, and in most cases, their budgets as well. The most significant potential change in this region has happened in Japan. It has been widely publicized, but a year ago, Japan has announced that it would actually completely change its position versus the Second Worldwide situation where they had been on since 1945. And they've decided to very quickly double their defense spending from 2022 to 2027. So doubling a budget that was already quite significant. It is a huge thing. Other countries have done similar things, maybe not with the same level of upscaling, but this is something we see generally across the countries in this region.
Nicolas, you've just mentioned also the fact that countries are re-looking at the way that they are spending, the whole mix of it. Has that a lot to do also with the lessons learned for the Russian-Ukraine war, particularly with regard to the use of drones, with the use of cyber warfare and so forth?
Yes. So you're absolutely spot on. The Ukraine war has been really a very insightful war that has actually led a number of countries to look into their requirements, their needs in a different way. So you did highlight that the first thing that we've seen in Ukraine is the extensive use of unmanned system. So unmanned can mean totally unmanned, but it also means partially unmanned, so semi-autonomous systems, or somehow an increased level of automation in manned system. But there is an overall trend towards unmanned. So unmanned, we see that as happening at every area in the defense theater. So, of course, on the aerospace area, so we see unmanned aerial vehicles, so drones, basically flying drones that we all hear about. So those are being used, of course, naturally for recognition, surveillance, threat identification. That has been the case for a very long time. But maybe very new now, we see weaponized drones appearing. So from the simple drones carrying weapons to more sophisticated solutions that we call loitering munitions, with drones actually scouting around an area and waiting to detect a target before hitting on it in a suicide mission. I mean, we call also those drones kamikaze drones. So this is something that is very, very new. It wasn't seen before, and it certainly wasn't seen at the scale at which it is seen today. So the overall defense is a huge challenge because we're not looking at one or two aircraft or flying object. We're looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of drones coming to you. And from a defense perspective, it's very challenging. So that's the flying drones. Then you've got what we call surface drone, so USV, unmanned surface vehicles. So those drones have been used in the past as well for some form of recognition and surveillance missions, but now we see them in Ukraine being weaponized, and we have seen some very serious damages being inflicted to bridges or to ships through those surface drones carrying large quantities of explosives. And then finally, we also see underwater drones. So those are systems that are operating underwater, mainly for mine detection and mine warfare applications. So that's a whole new area, and that's an area where we, Thales, are operating very heavily and providing some very advanced solutions. So that's one of the lessons of Ukraine. The other area, which is maybe a little bit less telling, but which we have seen as being very important in Ukraine, is the cyber operations. So there's been a lot of cyber attacks in Ukraine, maybe not as spectacular as in terms of impact as what we've seen with the drones that we were talking about before. But nonetheless, it's been extremely intensive. And what we've seen is the cyber defense has actually managed to keep hold of the cyber attackants, and the situation has been fairly stable from that perspective. But cyber also has to be looked at not in isolation, but there is a willingness or an interest from the parties in the field to combine cyber operations and kinetic operations for a greater impact. So that's also one of the key lessons learned in Ukraine.
Now, speaking of cybersecurity, last month you just acquired 100% of Imperva, which is a data and application cybersecurity company. Tell us about that, and that's for $3.6 billion US. Tell us about that, and how is that going to impact your overall solution suite?
Thanks. So yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you're raising it. So first of all, yeah, we've had a string of decisions in Thales over the past few years around cybersecurity. So we've beefed up organically our existing cyber operations. We've grown significantly over the past few years, and we've also made a number of bolt-on acquisitions over the years. So some of them being small and medium. And the largest one that we've announced was just last month in July. You did mention that. It was Imperva, the US-based company, for $3.6 billion. So that transaction is not yet fully effective. We are still waiting for some final approvals from the various antitrust bodies. We expect it to be effective by the beginning of 2024. And this will really significantly increase our capabilities in cyber. And we're doing this because we believe cyber is a domain that is strategically important for the world. And this is a domain where we want to be one of the leaders. So far, the cyber business has been very fragmented. A lot of companies have some interest in cyber, but none of them have actually reached really critical size and critical scale on cyber. With those acquisitions, that the statement we want to make, we are in the process of becoming one of the very few global cyber champions in the world. This will translate itself in significantly stronger capabilities in Asia as well. We have already a strong presence in cyber in Asia. We have a cyber operations center in Singapore, in this building, actually a few meters behind the location where I speak to you from. And with this acquisition, we will grow significantly so that it will become a bigger part of our business. And we will continue to focus on that moving forward because we do believe that this is an area that is absolutely critical for the future of what we do.
Nicholas, not only in the defense space, but also in the commercial space, AI is obviously going to play a very important role. What are the innovations and research that you're doing right now that are going to have an impact on your products in the next year or two?
Yes. So maybe if you don't mind, I'll come slightly back on the cyber stuff before I address the AI question. So on cyber, I'd just like to say that, of course, we're adding capability, but cyber is really a business that needs to be taken up from the very early stages of whatever a company does and whatever we do in Thales. So in respect to all the solutions that we're bringing to market, whether this is in the defense business, in the defense domains, or whether it's in the civilian domains, we have adopted a process that we call cyber by design. So all of the solutions we're bringing to market have been from the ground up thought about in the context of cyber protection. It's already quite difficult to protect an existing system by adding on some form of cyber protection to it. But the better way to do it is really to have it from the design standpoint. So that's really where we start. The second thing is we're offering solutions to customers to detect threat, to detect vulnerabilities, and take actions for those on an existing system, whether it's cyber protected by design or not. This is what we're offering as well in our cybersecurity practice. And then finally, in cyber, we are an end-to-end cyber integrator. So we are actually providing complete solutions. Some of those components making up the cyber solution that we propose are actually coming from us. We do have some high-speed encryption solutions. We do have some trusted key mechanism, but we also integrate third-party product to offer state-of-the-art end-to-end protected cyber solution. So that's the point I wanted to make on cyber. Now, if I move to AI, yes, AI is becoming prevalent in a lot of things that we do. Actually, coming back to what you were saying earlier, unmanned systems, what we are seeing as being more and more prevalent in Ukraine and now across the world. For those systems to be able to operate, there need to be a higher degree of decision-making in real time on board those systems. So AI is actually a necessity. And when we say AI, actually, it starts with machine learning, and then it goes to other forms of deep learning, all the way to artificial intelligence. And now, more and more, we're using generative AI technologies, as we have seen very widely publicized with ChatGPT and other of those type of solutions. But this is something that actually today is almost everywhere. In almost every solution that we deliver today, we make a greater use of those type of solutions. In the same way that we use big data analytics, in the same way that we use cyber protection, in the same way that we use IoT, this is something that is really a core technology in regardless of whichever type of solution we're talking about.
So Nicholas, I'm going to take you up on that point because essentially, because you have such robust, rock-solid solutions around defense, security, cybersecurity as well, that also obviously translates very well because it's so ubiquitous right now to the commercial sector, particularly in industries such as finance, banking, and so forth. Tell us about those commercial applications and businesses across Asia that you're currently overlooking.
So actually what we do at Thales, we are a high-tech company providing mission-critical systems to any type of customers. I think you did mention before, we focus on defense, we focus on security, aerospace, space, digital identity and security, and transportation. But in reality, we could do these kind of things for any other verticals. But what we do is really mission-critical systems at the high end. So the higher level of complexity, the more comfortable we are, the more valuable our solutions are to our customers. So this is true pretty much everywhere. In the field that you mentioned, financial services in particular, what we focus on is mainly cybersecurity. So we offer those type of cybersecurity assessments and protections from the cyber SOCs that we have in this region, and the one that I have there behind me. And this is really the main play we have with those type of solutions. And we believe that with the acquisition of Imperva that I mentioned just before, we can protect the end-to-end chain of value and the end-to-end data streams from the very beginning all the way to the moment the data is used.
Now, Nicholas, it sounds like you've had a busy few years and there's a lot of growth prospects moving forward. Where are you seeing growth coming from in 2024, 2025, and which markets are you particularly excited about?
So in this region, we're very excited about a number of countries, but we have seen Indonesia being very ambitious in terms of their investment profile and in terms of the capability acquisition that they want to make. We have been very pleased that the Rafale multi-role combat aircraft contract with Indonesia has been signed and put into force recently. This is a huge piece of business for us, with advanced radars, communication systems, electronic warfare solutions that we place on board of those aircraft. So that's one example, but Indonesia we see as a very big market that is growing very fast. Singapore is another market where we invest a lot of money. We have been actually very successful in the past few years. We will be celebrating this year our 50th anniversary of presence in Singapore. And one of the announcements we will be making is the establishment of a defense hub or defense service center, where we will be localizing in Singapore a number of skills and capabilities to support the installed base that we have with the Navy, with the Army, and with the Air Force. So that's a key market to us. The rest of the region, we focus heavily in Korea and Japan. Those are advanced market. I did highlight before that Japan is doubling its defense budget. So obviously this has significant interest and opportunities for us. And then the other countries of these regions are a little bit harder to predict, but certainly we are focusing on each and every large country and in terms of their needs, given that we have been with those countries providing solution to the armed forces for many, many years, in most cases more than 40 years. We always have opportunity here and there. So Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Bangladesh are very important market to us as well. So this is more of a geographical footprint. In terms of the areas where we focus on and we see a lot of growth, I think that was the first part of your question. There's many areas, but one of the areas that I can highlight is the air defense solutions. So I was talking to you about just earlier about the situation in Ukraine with the increased use of drones for various purposes. So we've always been a provider for advanced air defense solutions, but those air defense solutions were initially designed for a very different set of operations. So now, we were not talking about a few targets to track. You're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of targets or threats to potentially monitor in the airspace. You need to be able to detect those targets, to identify them, to select the ones that are actually targets and the ones that are not, and take actions against those. So this is an area where we've invested a lot of money. We have very advanced solutions, from the detection part, which is largely radars, to the defense part, which are in many cases missiles or other form of weapons. and the overall system being controlled by a command and control system, which is getting more and more sophisticated. So this is an area which is very key for us. Generally, those systems are layered. So you've got the very short range defense system, which is your last recourse. Then you've got a short range air defense system. You've got the medium range, and you've got the long range, each of them having a role to play depending on where the threat is. So we are actually offering solutions for each of those different layers. And the one that I can speak about in this interview today is the very short range air defense solutions, which we have been providing to Indonesia, to Malaysia, and to Thailand. This is public information. So this is an example of the things that we do and that we've been able to adapt over the years to meet the more challenging and recent requirement that I was just highlighting before.
Nicholas, it's been a fascinating conversation and it's a really good update. I've really learned a lot. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, I think one of the key topics as well that we haven't really spoken about in this discussion so far, but which I'd like to highlight is one of the other consequences of the war in Ukraine, and also it's also coming from the COVID situation. What a lot of our customers have realized is that it's very difficult to be served by suppliers, even partners, even strategic partners that are located thousands, if not tens of thousands of kilometers away. Whether those are companies like us from Europe, or whether those are American or wherever, it is very difficult. So there is an increased need, which we fully understand, for localizing a certain level of capabilities, for localizing a level of skills, especially in the maintenance and operation and support of the system that have been deployed, but also in many cases for enhancement and improvements, mainly software enhancement and improvements to solutions that have been deployed and that might have been designed far away from here. But those, if I can call them, customization to the specific requirements of a given country, this is something that is seen as being extremely important today. And we at Thales have absolutely accepted this situation. We have been working in many countries with key partners in terms of transfers of knowledge, transfers of skills, transfer of technology, even in some cases, transfer of manufacturing to reach this type of localization that is very much sought after. So one thing that we've communicated, it's also public knowledge, I can repeat in this segment here, is in Indonesia, we've decided to establish a joint venture with a state-owned enterprise called PT LEN. Mm-hmm. And we will have by next year a very strong set of capabilities in a joint venture with this partner in Indonesia, focusing around defense solution and defense systems, starting with radars, but going broader, with the ambition to be able to provide a certain level, not a complete level, but a certain level of autonomy in the country. So we do that in other countries as well. I think that's an important trend that is worth mentioning. And we see some companies are not comfortable with that. They feel that they are losing control of their business. For us, we are embracing it, and we think it is the way forward. So, if there's any of our potential customers listening, I want to make that very clear that we can discuss those topics very openly.
Nicholas, it's really been very informative. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Brian, thank you. I hope it was useful, and I wish you all the best. I look forward to coming back very soon.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking to Nicholas Bouverot. He's the Vice President for Asia at Thales. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to BizTech's C-Suite Conversation Show. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.